Okay, so today we're going to use lots of Eclipse to illustrate to you object-oriented programming in Java. So if you got your laptop, feel free to launch Eclipse, and I'm going to do things together. Basically, let me just go over some ingredients about object-oriented programming in Java. We may not go over all of them today, but definitely finish that on Wednesday. Okay, just to have a walkthrough. And you will see the tutorial videos going through basically the same concept, but with a different example. That's kind of the plan. Okay, so now this slide over here actually summarizes every ingredient that you have to pay attention to for object-oriented programming. All right, so let's go over the ingredient for object-oriented programming. Sorry, again, the head over there is cut off. Over there, I simply say object-oriented programming. Guys, at the back, can we start? All right. Let's now go over the ingredients quickly. So now, whenever I talk about the term OOP, okay, it stands for Object-Oriented Programming, okay, just for short. So there are two ingredients you have to pay attention to. First of all, you have to talk about the concept for templates versus instances or entities. So these are the two things we're going to create, one at the compile time and the other one at the runtime. So these are the two concepts you want to distinguish very well, clearly. So whenever we talk about templates, so this is something we call Java classes. So you will see classes versus objects. So whenever you talk about classes, it's compile time, which means when you're typing code in Eclipse at the compile time. On the other hand, when you try to execute your Java code as an application, you're going to create objects at the runtime. So these are the two things you want to distinguish. And at the compile time, you have basically attributes versus methods. I will talk about them one by one. So let's talk about attribute first. Basically, attributes are simply just variables. However, the variables over here are different from what we did previously in the lab exercises. In the lab exercises, you only declare variables inside the main method. But now we're going to relax the constraint. Whenever you declare variables, you can definitely declare variables in the class at a class level. So what does that mean? That means every method you're going to declare in the same class, they can all share the same variables. Okay, that's something we'll see. So they're called attributes. And also we're going to see three kinds of methods that you can define for each class. The first one we're going to see is something called constructor. Literally, it simply means it's for you to construct a runtime instance at a runtime. Okay, constructor. We're going to see example. Okay, so now I will just go up to this point and then let's see something right away. Okay. Before I do that, let me just briefly talk about how you should study the slides. In the slides, you will see two examples I included. In the tutorial videos for this week, I'm going to talk about two-dimensional points. So I'm going to skip that part for the lecture. You'll see that in the tutorial videos. Okay, so you get two examples. In the class, I'm going to focus on this particular example about persons. Okay, so you get two different flavors of example. So now, this is step number one. Whenever you're given a problem which might be described in English, any natural language, you want to somehow translate the idea into Java. So this is why object orientation is so powerful. You cannot really do this kind of thing so naturally in other language without object orientation. I just want to give you a little bit feel. For this course over here, translation from natural language into Java classes or methods will not be the focus. We'll definitely give you many hints. So that's more at the advanced level for software design. But let's just do one example just to give you some intuition. Basically, every time when you're given a particular problem, let's say for persons, you want to identify basically the critical nouns and verbs. Okay? Not every one of them. Only the critical ones. Of course, which one should be critical is up to your judgment as a designer or implementer. Okay, I'll give you one example. And for nouns and verbs, just generally speaking, the critical nouns can be turned into attributes or they might be turned into classes. Okay? On the other hand, for verbs, they will somehow be turned into methods. Okay, that's a very rough categorization. But as you gain more experience, you'll see what I mean. Let's just highlight if you can just read it through, I'll give you 20 seconds very quickly. Can you just read through this particular passage for me very quickly? Okay, just get a feel. Example 1, not 2. Okay, I presume you have some familiarity with it. So basically, let me tell you the answer right away. Okay, it's an ongoing exercise you can do for yourself. First of all, I will highlight the noun person. Okay, and also I will highlight the nouns. Things like this: a person ages and a person grows on their heights and weights, and also things like that. So these are the 3 critical pieces of information I would need in order to translate to Java. Specifically, the entire passage basically talks about what a person is like. So basically, later on, we're going to translate the person into a class or into a template, which means at the compile time, we're going to define what a person is like. For example, a person has an age, they have a weight, they have a height, and also maybe they have nationality. So these are the different attributes you may have for a person. At the runtime, you can create as many persons as you like as objects. Okay, that's kind of the rough idea. And also for each person, they might age, which means you increment their age by 1, for example, for every year. And also they might gain weights, lose weights, or they might grow taller, things like that. Okay, so these are the rough idea. Of course, they're absolutely informal. To make it more precise, you got to translate it into Java. Okay, let's do it right away. So what I would do is I will just, I already launched Eclipse in my computer, okay? Again, header is cut off. Anything that's cut off, I'll read it to you, okay? Let's first of all just create a new Java project quickly. So what I will do is I'll just create a new Java project, and then one thing to note, okay? So over here, I'll just simply call the persons, okay? That's a project name. Okay, that's the name of the projects, okay? And then I'm going to create a new class. So now one critical difference I want to highlight to you right away. Previously, when we talk about your lab exercises or even the lab test, number 1 and number 2, you're always given just a single class with a single main method. Okay? But now this is still going to be true. However, we're going to introduce more things into the context. Okay? So this is some mental picture you want to have from now on. Let me just highlight what you have already. Let's say we have something called tester, or sometimes I may simply call it app, or application. And then you still got the public static void main method over there, which you can automatically generate using Eclipse. So this part is just the same as before, okay? However, now, we might create 1 or more classes outside this particular tester. What I mean by this, mentally, you can think about, I simply call the model, in the sense that we try to model the real life phenomenon into, for example, person or 2-dimensional points. And later on, for the second week of tutorial, you're going to see maybe 3 or 4 classes working together. Okay? So model simply means you're trying to model the reality that you're observing, reality. Okay? You can have as many classes as you like. Okay? There's no upper bound on how many classes you can have. However, you only have 1 single app class with a single main method. There's no other main method in any other classes, only in the app class. Okay? That's a mental picture you want to have. And then inside the main method, the only main method, we're going to use all the classes we create. For example, the person, which I'm going to demonstrate to you today. Okay? Just get a mental picture clear. Everything else will flow through quite naturally. Okay, let's just go back to Eclipse. I am going to create 1 class under the model over here first. I'm going to call that person. Okay? And one thing to note, whenever you create a class, it has to be capitalized, okay? Okay, let me do that first. So if I go back to my Eclipse, I'm just going to create a new class, and then I will explain bits by bits to you. Okay, I'll just call it person, okay? Okay, now make sure you don't select this box. You don't want to generate the main method, okay? There's no need for that. And then I would say finish. Okay, I would just want to make sure you, okay, which line can you see first? Okay, I'm just gonna hit some new line. Give me just 1 moment. Okay, so that'll be good. Okay, I'll start developing from here. Basically, this will be my recommended structure for each class. basically you're going to have declare attributes first, which are variables for the class. Okay, let me write it down for you. Let me write some comments. First of all, we can know that this person class over here, you can say this class is a template for person entities. And now so once we know this is supposed to be a template for every person, the next question will be, how would you characterize each person? What should be the attributes? So now let me tell you right away. Okay, let's say for our purpose of illustration, each person has integer age, they have double weights and heights, and also they have a string value for nationality: Canadian, British, Chinese, Korean, etc. Okay, so now let's simply put it here. So now the first section I want to have, the first one are the attributes. Okay, just attributes. They are simply just variables. So these are variables declared at the class level. That means all methods may use them. All the methods you might declare. Okay, we're going to see that. Okay, if you find the typing not so quick, that's okay. I'm going to make the code available to you, so you don't have to worry. Feel free to type as well. Okay, let's declare the attributes. The way you declare variables is just the same as before. Type followed by name. Let's say integer int, and then I say age. So that means every person has an age, although their age value might be different. Okay, and also we can have string nationality. Okay, the name of the variable is completely up to you, and also we can have double and then weights. Let's assume the weight is going to be in kg. Okay, let's assume. Okay, you can make it a little bit more complicated to make some conversion. That's okay. For now, just for let's aim for simplicity. And the next one, I can say double height. Also, let's make it also simple. Let's say in meters. Okay. The reason is later on I'm going to show you how you can calculate BMI for a particular person. So if you're already in the right measure, it's easier. Okay, pretty much corresponding to your previous exercise for the lab, calculating BMI. So these are the 4 attributes for your person. Okay, that's the job number 1. Every time you're given a class to develop, always start with the attributes. So these are the variables that will be available to every method you declare in the class. Okay, number 1. And now, before I show you some runtime stuff, okay, I would like to do just one more thing. Okay, if you just go back to, let me just go back to the iPad over here. I want to show you what we have done. So what we have done over here, we talk about templates, okay, and then we talk about attributes which characterize what a person is. So now I'm going to go into methods. Okay, let me do the first kind of method, which is a very special kind called constructor, which means now I have a template, but it's only static. It's only the compile time stuff. I want to instantiate or make an instance out of it. I can make as many instances as I like out of a particular templates. How do I do that? Okay, to do that, I need 2 things. Number 1, I need a tester. Number 2, I need to declare constructor. Let's do the constructor first. Okay, let's go back to Eclipse over here. So now I'm going to have a second section over here, constructors. Okay, there is one single rule you have to take it for granted. You have to remember. You have no freedom whatsoever what the name should be for the constructor. Okay, you cannot have your own name for the constructor. You must have the same name as the class you are trying to declare the constructor for. In this case, it must be called person. There's no freedom on that. Okay, so what I will do is I will simply say over here. Okay, I will simply declare person. You can see the person over here has the same name as the class over here. Okay, so now you guys haven't really done any methods before, so I just want to give you a quick overview about how a method can be defined. Okay, let me just write some syntax first and I'll explain. So now for person over here, what I would do is I'm simply going to have an empty pair of parentheses. Okay, inside the parentheses, I can choose to declare as many input as I like in order to construct the instance for the person. Let me just give you one example. Let's say I simply got integer age. Let me just have some naming convention over here. I want to make it very simple. Let's say new age. okay, and also nude weights, and also nude heights, just that. So what I have done over here, I'm declaring a constructor for the person class. You can declare as many constructors as you wish for each class. Let's just start with one. Okay, I'll show you some variety a little bit later or Wednesday. So now I want to explain the syntax right away to you so you will get a feel about how to do it because it will apply to all other methods. Okay, let me just switch the iPad over here and then I will put it here. So what we just did, we simply say person, okay? So this is the name of the constructor. And then parentheses over here, right? Okay, so this is something you have to know. A special name for that. Okay, over here you can basically you're supplying a list of inputs. Well, formally they're called parameters for the constructor. Simply means whenever you try to call the constructor, what kind of input are you going to supply? If I want to create an instance for the person, I should really tell what the age is for the person, what the weight and height are for the person. Okay? So now to define that, I can have a comma separated list. I can have maybe the first one over here, the second one over here, and the third one. Let's say I got 3. Okay, let me move that a little bit. Okay, so it's still visible. Okay, so now how do we specify each one of the 3 parameters over here? The same as before. You want to basically you're trying to declare input variables over here. Okay, so you can first of all you want to have the type. For example, integer, and then you can say new age. Okay, I'm declaring one input variable. The second one, I can say double. I can say nude weights. And I got a third one. I also got double type and nude heights. I got 3 variables here. And one thing to note, it is as if I'm declaring these variables inside this method. So one thing to note, basically the entire body of the method, you can see we have an opening curly brackets, we got a closing curly brackets over here. So inside this method, this is so-called the scope of the input variables. So what does that mean? That means you can actually refer to this, and this. You can refer to these variables inside the body of the method. You can definitely do that. We'll see that in just a moment. Okay? You can refer to all of them. Okay? Okay, one more thing to tell you. One more thing. Okay, so now let me just show you a slightly different picture for the class. Let's say we got the class called person over here. Okay, class person. Okay, and then we got attribute. Let me just give you one example. Let's say attribute, I got integer age. Okay, integer age, and also I have the constructor which has the same name as the class person, and then I say the first input variable is simply integer new age. Okay, and also the rest of the input variables. Okay, I'll just leave them like that. Okay, so now you can see that we got 2 variables over here. Number 1, this one here is an attributes. And this one over here is the input parameter for this particular constructor. Okay, so now what we want to know is inside the body of the method, like the orange box over here, what can we refer to? The answer is, first of all, you can refer to the new age. That's no problem. You can refer to it over here. And number 2, you can also refer to all the attributes in the same class. As I said before, all the attributes are like a class level variable. They are usable to every method you declare. So that means you can also refer to age over here. So you can refer to age, you can also refer to new age. But how we manipulate them, I'm going to show you. Okay, any question about this so far? Okay, we're going to see more and more examples. Okay, so now let's go back there. How do we define the constructor over here? Okay, let me show you some, well, basically inside the method, whatever you learn before the object orientation, everything applies. You can do elementary programming such as assignments, you can do if statements, you can also do loops. But for today, let's focus on more on the assignments, okay? But later on, we're going to see how you can also write loops inside each method. Everything previously still apply, okay? You don't abandon them. So now, let me write something to you. I would say, first of all, H is assigned to, okay? H is simply assigned to new H. Okay, that's one assignment I'm going to do. And then, let me see over here, I got some compile time error. Okay, let me just save it. Okay. Okay, I'll get there in just a moment. And then there's the first assignments, and then I will also say new weights is assigned to, oh, sorry, let me see it again. So I want to say weights is assigned to new weights. And also I would say heights is assigned to new heights. So I got 3 assignments over here, 3. Okay, different one of them. Let me just see what's going on over here. Okay. Let me just explain this particular code, and then we'll try to see some tester. Okay, I'll resolve this in just a moment. Okay, let's not waste time. So what I would do is, let me just get this particular fragment of code and see what's going on over here. Okay, hopefully it's going to be fine. Okay, let me have a new page for you over here. Okay, so now let me just copy and paste the code. Okay, hopefully that's going to succeed. Give me one moment. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's the code we just typed in. Okay, let me explain over here what exactly is going on. Okay, so we have a class over here, okay, which is called person. And then the constructor simply has the same name as a class. Okay, and typically, you may also add public to it, but public is something I will explain a little bit later. Okay, let me just add public over here. All right. Okay, and then we have, basically these are the 3 attributes that we have. And so these 3 are the input parameters we have over here. So these are the parameters. So now what we want to see is exactly what these 3 lines really mean over here, okay? That's something really important. So now, let me just take one assignment for example, just one, okay? So what I would do is, let's see this. You can see the H over here. H is referring to the H over here. You can see the name, right? So every name of the variable is not unique over here. Let's not add a complication. So you can see the H is referring to this particular H over here. Versus, if you look at that, new H is referring to this particular variable over here. Okay? So now, what we want to see is exactly how these 2 variables work together, and similarly for other pairs. Okay? So now, before I move on to Eclipse, I want to write something right away for you. Okay? Let's imagine that we actually create a new class in Java. Let's imagine in Eclipse. Let me just put it here. Okay, let me simply say I declare a class, let's say public class. I will simply say tester. I'm trying to test how the person will work. Okay, like a new class over here. And then you can have the normal stuff over here. You can say public static void and main over here, and then of course string args, etc. Okay, that's not important over here. So now let's see what we can write over here. That's really important. Okay, so now let's see this. When you declare something called constructor, that means you want to create an instance of the person for the person template or the person class. Let's see exactly how you can create an instance. Let's see that. Let me write a line for you. I will simply say person. And then I will simply say, let's say Jin. Okay, you can see let me just write down the whole thing, and then I'll explain to you. Is assigned to, and now this is some keyword you have to learn. Let me just erase this part here. It's going to be new. Okay, new, and then person. Okay, and then how many inputs am I expecting for calling the constructor? I got one here, I got one here, I got one here. I'm expecting the age first. I'm expecting the weight, and I'm expecting the heights. So now let me just put them in. So now if you try to call the constructor, you're going to supply all the expected input values. Okay? For example, for the age, let's say Jim is, let's say 45 years old, separated by comma. Let's say for the weights, let's say it's kilograms. Let me say 72, for example. And then for the heights, it's going to be 1.72, for example. Okay, let's pause and look at this line. It's very fundamental. Okay, nothing was like this in your previous labs. Okay, nothing was like this. So this line is so-called creating an object and from a particular class we just defined called person. So what are we doing over here? Okay, let's analyze the line, part of the line bits by bits. This part over here, let's say person and Jim. So this part here still follow the convention we set in the elementary programming. We are basically declaring a variable called Jim. So Jim is the variable name. But what about person? Person is the type for the variable. And this is something you haven't learned so far. Because we said before, the type could be maybe int, double, boolean, or string. But now, it seems like we can just, what we're doing over here is, for this particular person over here, person, we are simply using the name of the class as the type. That is absolutely allowed. That's something you also want to get used to. So now, whenever you're declaring the variable name, what about the type? You still have the possibility like before, integer, boolean, double, character, and string. But now, any class that you actually define on your own, you can use the class name as a type name. That's also possible. Okay? That's something you want to get used to, number one. Okay? So this part over here, we're simply declaring that Jim is actually of type person. But the next question is, what do I mean by saying Jim is of type person? Okay? We have to understand a little bit about computer memory, but I'll try to keep technical detail the minimum. Okay? Before I talk about exactly how this assignment over here, equal sign, is going to work, let's talk about this particular expression over here on the right-hand side. So we have new keyword. New simply means create a new object for me. And then we also got person over here. And then we got values over here, right? So this is what's going to happen, okay? Let me keep it very light, this case. Whenever you're having the new over here, that means you want to create a new object. Okay, it's a new is a keyword you have to do in Java, okay? And also, what does it really mean when I try to refer to person, and what's person over here? Person over here is referring to the constructor that I just created over here in the person class. I'm calling that particular constructor, okay? And then by calling that constructor, I'm basically doing 45. So 45 is actually going to be supplied for new age. And 72 is going to be supplied for new weights. And 1.72 is going to be supplied for new heights. So that's basically what's going to happen. But now, how do you picture this in your mind? Is really important because as you create multiple objects at the runtime, you might easily lose track. So let me just show you how you can visualize this. The easiest way is by drawing something. Okay? Now, let's do bits by bits. First of all, let me just use orange to just draw this particular part. Okay? Just this part here. Okay, this part here. When I say new person over here and 45, 72, 1.72, what do I mean? Think it this way. This is how you should really draw. You're basically drawing a box, and this box represents the new objects we are creating. Okay? And then what's the type of the objects? Person. Okay? So I'm just going to give a title of the box. It's simply going to be person over here. And then every person, as we can see, the person over here, back to our definition. Every person has 4 different attributes, right? We have age, we have nationality, we have weights, and we have heights. So let's divide the boxes into 4 different regions, okay? And then we'll see. So now what I will do is I'm going to divide that into 4 different sections over here. So 2 columns. The left column tells about all the attributes. So we have age over here. I'm going to write it down. So we got age, and we got nationality. I'll say nat, okay, just for short. Nationality, and also we have W standing for weights, and also we have H standing for heights. So these are the 4 attributes for every person objects. Whenever you create a new person object, they all have 4 attributes, no matter what. What's going to make a difference between every pair of objects is the exact value for each attributes, because attribute itself is just a variable. Depends on what you store for that particular attributes. Okay, so now in this case, let's have a look at these lines over here. Okay, so now these lines become important. First of all, you can see inside the constructor, we say age is assigned to new age. Okay, so now let's try to link it a bit more carefully. Let me just say one more clarification. So when you look at this particular part over here, this is the definition. So definition of the constructor. Okay, this is how we define that. On the other hand, for this particular part over here, this is the use of the constructor. The principle is easy. Define the constructor just once and use it for as many times as you like. Okay? Each use of the constructor is going to create a new instance. Okay? That's kind of the principle. So now for this particular use of the constructor, what are we doing here? Basically, you follow position by position. 45 over here corresponds to a new age. Okay? So 45 is over here. And then 72 is corresponding to the new weights. So 72 is over here. And also 1.72 correspond to the heights over here. Okay, that's basically what you're trying to do. So now, how do we use those values? Questions? 1.72. Ah, I see. I see what you mean. You mean over here? That's something maybe I forgot to declare. You know what? Let me just fix something quickly. I see your point. Okay. Let me also fix the Java code a little bit quickly for you. So this part here should be double, and also over here should be double as well. Sorry, I simply just forgot to do that. Okay. So now let me. Can I just review very quickly with you? Sorry for the typo. If you look at line number 4, okay, line number 24, we are declaring the constructor for the person class, right? And then we got 3 separate input parameters. Okay. The first one over here. The first one is simply of type integer, which means you can pass any integer value as this input. And the second one is actually a double, which means you can be 2.5, 6, 7.5, etc. And over here it's just another double. Okay? So now back to the original question over there. Okay? So now, sorry for that typo again. So now basically what I meant to say was, here there should be a double. Okay, I simply just wouldn't do the snapshot again. And here there will also be a double. So this now will make sense because you can see 45 is indeed an integer. And also 72. Now, question for you. Can 72 be assigned to a double variable? Are you sure? Remember back to the elementary programming lecture, what did we say? If you want to assign a double to an integer, you want to do a cast. But if you want to assign an integer to a double, you may want to, something called coercion will be done automatically for you. Okay, I know it's been a long time, it's been a few weeks, but make sure you don't throw that away, right? You're going to need that for your later course materials. Okay, so now for this part, basically 45 is going to be the new age, and 72 is going to be new weights, and 1.72 is going to be the new heights. So what does that mean over here? Let's go a little bit further. For this particular usage for the constructor, I'm going to show you another usage, so hopefully things will be even clearer. But now that means for every, you know what, the diagram's getting a little bit messy. I would suggest we do another copy quickly. Can I just copy that? Yes, I can. Okay. So now let me just do a new page very quickly for you. Okay, so now this is just same block of code, and again, don't forget, over here, there has to be a double. Okay, and over here, it has to be a double as well. Okay, and then, I think it would be just enough for me just to talk about 2 usages just for today. Okay, so now what I will do is, let me just say, I got class over here, I got tester. You know what? For now, why don't I just type very quickly? Okay, so now everything compiled. So what I will do is, I will go back to my package explorer. I'm going to create one more class for you, one more. Okay, you can right click on the package and say new, and then class. I can call that person tester. Well, let's say tester. Okay, so now, whenever you're creating something for you to actually test the objects, you're basically making some console application. So in this case, you're going to select the main method just once, only for one single class. Okay, so now let me just show you the line over here. Let me just hit new line here. Okay, the only line we're going to write inside the method is like this. Okay, let me write it down. You will say person, let's say Jim, is just going to be assigned to new person. Okay, the age first. Let me be consistent with what I said in the iPad. It's going to be 45, 72, and also 1.72. Okay, that's a line I just said, right? You know what? Let me make it even more interesting very quickly. Okay? So now let's say this is Jim. Let me put just another one. Okay, so now I'm just changing the name of the variable to be, let's say Jonathan. How about that? And now, for the attribute values over here, for the input, I can pass whatever values I like. And this does simulate a real life. Every 2 persons, they might have the same age, or they may not. They might have the same weight, or they may not, right? Let's say they simply don't. Let's say Jonathan is a slightly more senior person, let's say 62. And let's say maybe 65 kilograms. And also 1.81. Okay? So we basically, if you only look at line number 10, line number 11, we're basically calling the same constructor twice, right? Calling that twice. The first time we create one object called Jim. The second time we create another object called Jonathan. So now it's really important for the rest of today for me to visualize exactly what these 2 lines are doing. And then we can continue on Wednesday to see how we can define different methods to manipulate the objects. Okay, let's say we do that. So what I will do is, let me do this more properly this time. I will need 2 screenshots. Number 1, I'm going to simply just copy this particular one over here. Just bear with me. I'm just going to copy this one first. Okay, the first one is going to be the tester. So I'll put it here. Okay, that's the tester over here. Let me put it on the bottom over here, right? That's the 2 lines. And the number 2, I'm just going to go back to my person since I fixed the typo. I want to do it again. Okay, let's focus on this for the rest of the lecture. Okay, so now this one here, I'm going to also copy that and come back here. Okay, so now it should be updated. Very good. Okay, so now we got person and we got the tester, right? We got 2 classes. Notice one thing. Only the tester class has the main method. On the other hand, the person class does not have the main method, okay? And this is the constructor that we talk about, okay? So this is a constructor. So this is where we define the constructor. And so these 2, person and person, so these are two calls to the constructor. You can call the constructor for as many times as you like. So now, let's focus on how to visualize what's going on over here. The visualization is very intuitive. We're basically creating 2 boxes, each one of them corresponding to an object. And then for each one of them, they got the 4 attributes as defined in the person class, and for every attribute, they got different values. Okay? Let's see that. Let's see the first one. The first one over here, let's use pink. So when we say new person, 45, 72, 1.72. Okay, let's see what this part will do. Okay, what it is going to do is, first of all, we have, okay, we're basically passing 45 over here for the new age. So new age is 45. And then 72 is going to be used for the new weights, 72. And also for new heights, it's going to be 1.72. So 1.72, right? So these are the values we're going to use. Okay? Exactly how do we use it? Okay, let me just draw this one more time. Whenever we say new, that means we're creating new objects of this particular type, which is person. So we're going to call this particular person constructor. Let's draw the box very quickly. Again, you're going to draw a box to represent each object. And then the person is going to be over here, okay, the person type. And then we have exactly 1, 2, 3, and 4 different attributes. So we're going to split that into 4 different regions over here. So we got A for age, M for nationality, W for weights, and H for heights. Okay, that's about the first objects. And now let's see exactly how these values are filled in. That's something we want to know exactly, right? So now let's see this. For example, as we said before, 45 is going to be the new age. So that means the new age is basically 45 over here. And we are saying that the age on the left-hand side is going to be replaced by 45. Where is the age? Age is basically over here. And replace it by 45. So we put 45 over here. And now for the second assignment, we say that what's new weights? New weights is basically 72 over here. So that, and we say that the weights is going to be assigned to 72. And the weights is over here. Okay, the weights is here is going to be 72. And finally, we know the new height is 1.72. So now new height is 1.72. The height is just going to be assigned to 1.72. Okay, that's the first call to the constructor. Okay, that's how you trace it. One more thing to say. Over here, I'll give you a little bit more details next time. But when we say we declare Jim to be of type person, and then we say Jim is assigned to this particular new objects, usually speaking, let me just draw it this way, and then we'll talk a little bit more details about this next time. So Jim is simply just pointing to this particular objects. That's how you visualize an object creation. So now, let's apply the same logic to see how the second object is created. Let's do the second one. For the second one, I'm going to use a different color to really distinguish. Okay? Let's say for the second one, I'm going to use blue. So new person, over here, I'm calling the same constructor for the second time. And now, for the second time, I'm going to do the following. I'm just going to say 62. So 62 is for the new age over here, right? And also 65 is for the new weights. And also 1.81 over here is for the new heights. Okay? Basically, we're calling the same constructor, but now we're giving two different input values over here. Okay? So we got 62, we got 65, we got 1.81. So now how do we visualize this? Again, this is a new keyword over here. That means we're creating a separate objects, separate objects of the same type, which is called person, right? The same type of objects, which is person. And for the person objects, for the person template, we know that we got these these same attributes. So we still got 4 different sections over here. Okay, age for age, nationality, weights, and heights. So one thing to know, you can see for between these two objects, the attributes are just the same. Every person has the same attributes. However, the attribute values might be different. That's kind of the thing we want to pay attention to. Okay, so now over here, let's see exactly what's going to happen. Because we know, let's say, how exactly constructor is going to be executed. Because we have new age over here being 62. So new age over here is 62. And then we assign age to be 62. So age is going to be assigned to 62 over here. All right? And then we also got 65 is the new weights. So new weights over here is 65 over here. So that means we're going to assign the weights to be 65. So we get 65 over here. Okay, 62, 65 so far. And then what about the new weight? The new heights. The new height is 1.81 over here. In that case, we're going to have new heights being 1.81 and then assign that to the heights for the attributes. So it's going to be 1.81. And another thing to note, you can see that the right-hand side column, we got 45 versus 62. So what does that mean? That means even though we are talking about the same attributes being age, however, depending on which attribute, which object you're talking about. For this particular 62, okay, let me just complete one more thing. You can see this, once we create this particular object over here, we got the assignments, and then we say Jonathan. So that means Jonathan is just going to be the name of another person objects, and it's pointing to this particular person object. Okay, so now we got two person objects. Okay, that's how we created two objects here. Let me just show you one more thing, okay, in the debugger, and then we'll continue from Wednesday. So now let's go back to Eclipse over here. If you look at these two lines over here, let me just say over here, system.out.println, okay? I can say created two objects over here. What I want to show you is the debugger very quickly. To see that in the debugger, you can see exactly the kind of visualization that I just showed you. You got one person object here, you got another person object over here. Let's have a look very quickly. So now, let's simply just put a breakpoint in line number 12, okay? Just right after we created this object over here and after created this object over here. That's something I want to show you, okay? And then I'll simply launch the debugger over here, and then we'll see exactly what's going to happen. So I will switch to the debugging perspective. Okay, so now we're here. Let me just drag the, so now, let me just organize that a little bit here for you. So now you can see we are pausing at line number 12 right after we have created two objects here, right? Right after. And now I want you to look at the variables panel over here. You can see that that's a variables over here. Oh, you don't see that. How about that? Okay. So you can see that under the variables, we got two objects. One is Jim, and the other one is Jonathan, right? If you expand the variables over here, I want you to pay attention to the comparison over here. Okay? You can see under the object for Jim, you can see over here, Jim is a person object, as can be seen over here. And also Jonathan is a person object as well. So now you can see Jim has age, height, nationality, and weights. Similarly, Jonathan also has wage, height, nationality, and weights, right? So both of them are of type person, so they have the same attributes. On the other hand, what's different is what's the value for individual attributes. So you can see for the age of Jim is 45 versus the age for Jonathan is actually 62, so the age is different. But how can you actually see this from the tester? Let's do one more thing, and then we'll continue from Wednesday. Let's do one more thing. So now let's stop the debugger over here and then go back to the tester. Okay? How do we actually print out the age for each one of the person? How do we do that? So I can see system.out.println. Okay? I can say age of Jim. Okay, let me put it here first. And I can do another line, age of, let's say, Jonathan over here. So now, here's another critical thing you want to learn, how to write, how to manipulate the objects. There is a so-called dot notation, which we will learn much more later. Let me just show you right away. Age of Jim, we know that we are expecting to see 45. On the other hand, for the age of Jonathan, I'm expecting to see 62. But how do I do that? This is how you do it. First of all, give the variable of the variable name for the objects. I would say Jim over here, and then I would say dot. You really want to get used to the dot notation here. It's really important when you do object-oriented programming. For Jim, and then I can say age over here. versus over here I can say plus Jonathan and then dot age. Okay, so now you can see we are basically somehow calling the same attributes called age. However, depending on which object we are calling the age upon, in this first case it's going to be Jim's age. In the second case it's going to be Jonathan's age. They are going to be different. Okay, let's verify that quickly, and then I'll highlight one more thing. Okay, now if I execute this as a Java application, you can see age of Jim is 45 versus age of Jonathan is 62. Okay, let me just go back to here. Okay, basically what I did was, over here I simply got two lines over here. When I say Jim.age versus Jonathan.age. Okay, syntactically, let's see the difference. We have something dot over here. That's a syntax. And now you can see that age and age over here, so these are the attribute name. And over here, let me use a different color here. What about blue? The Jim and also Jonathan over here, so these are the object name. And how do, oh, sorry, it's not even visible. Okay, so Jim over here and also Jonathan over here, so these are the object name. So now, how do we know which object names we can use? It's exactly from here. We got Jim over here created, and also we got Jonathan over here created. Okay? Right. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to release the tutorial videos for this week. I'm going to do a different example. Okay?